Hello everyone. We will start our presentation with the basic elements of communication system. First comes our source encoder on the transmitter side. So the source encoder compresses the data into minimum possible number of bits. So this process helps in effective utilization of the bandwidth and it removes the redundant or unnecessary bits. Then comes our channel encoder, which does the coding for error correction. So what happens is during the transmission of the signal through the channel, the noise is added to the signal. So the signal may get altered and hence to avoid this, the channel encoder adds some redundant bits to the transmitted data. So these bits basically work as error correcting bits. Then comes our digital modulator. So the goal of a modulator is to reliably transmit this data to the destination through the given communication channel depending on the nature of communication channel. So yeah, depending on the nature, data can suffer from one or more of a certain channel impairments, including noise, attenuation, distortion, fading, and other interferences. So digital modulation is basically a process of mapping the digital sequence to signals like SMT for transmission over the communication channel. So this SMT can be basically analog signals or electromagnetic waves in case of wireless channels. So channel is basically a medium that allows the signal like SMT to transmit from transmitter end to the receiver end. So we have adopted Rayleigh fading model in our project. So Rayleigh fading model assumes that the magnitude of a signal that has passed through such a transmission medium will vary randomly or fade according to the Rayleigh distribution. We'll discuss more on this later. Then comes our demodulator, where the received signal is demodulated as well as converted again from analog to digital sequence. So the bit sequence gets reconstructed over here, and the channel decoder and the source decoder practically perform inverse of what the respective encoders did. One cannot start modulation projects without the knowledge of signal space. Signal space representation is basically our ability to represent waveforms as vectors. It simplifies performance analysis and modulation design, and it also leads to efficient modulation, demodulation, implementations as well as visualization. So I'll not emphasize much on how one can represent a signal in form of a vector. So these set of all finite energy waveforms of duration t and the corresponding vectors which form constellation in the Euclidean space share many structural properties. So these are some of the important and basic parameters in COM theory which we will be using in our presentation as well as the project. So a message is what a signal SMT or corresponding vector SM represent uniquely, and for modulation purposes, these set of symbols from 1 to m will be forming our message space. Signaling interval is basically the time duration assigned for transmission of each of the signals. Message bits are the average number of bits required to represent our unique message. Bitrate is bits per signal times the signaling rate. So eventually it's bits per second. Yeah. So the average energy is the mean of energies of all signals in the constellation. We have and will assume that all signals and the corresponding messages have equal probability of being transmitted, and that is why Pm equals 1 by m. So average power will become average energy divided by signaling duration, and average energy per bit is the average energy divided by the number of bits per message signal. We are only going to discuss 16 QAM. Our message signal SMT is basically the real part of a baseband signal modulated by carrier frequency F0 times complex factor AM, which decomposes into real part times first orthogonal signal and imaginary part times second. The most important point to note is that our message is encoded into the factor AM, which is only distinctive feature between the different signals and vectors in our space. These orthogonal signals are unit energy signals consisting of baseband signal modulated by sine and cosine of carrier frequencies. 16 QAM is the scheme for the case where we have at most 16 distinct message signals. For each signal, real and imaginary part of AM can take values from -3 to +3 as shown. The corresponding constellation diagram is shown here. Note that each vector is represented this way, linking to the given SMT. A set of 4 bits is assigned to each vector. You may also notice that we have adopted gray labeling scheme to minimize the bit error rate. E average can be calculated by using the previously mentioned formula. It turns out to be equal to this. So in our project, we have MATLAB simulation. So we don't actually have a baseband signal GT. So we took our average energy for our scheme to be equal to 10. So EG will be equal to 2 in our case correspondingly. Now we'll focus on our channel. So we have a 2x2 MIMO multi-input multi-output channel with Rayleigh fading model. So the process includes that here we have input data stream of bits. The first set of 4 bits will be modulated to signal X1 transmitted by first transmit antenna. Second set will be mapped to X2 signal transmitted by second antenna, and these both signals X1 and X2 will be transmitted simultaneously through the channel for a signaling interval, making one channel use. During the next channel use, next 8 bits will be transmitted, and so on. The received signals Y1 and Y2 will be linear combinations of X1 and X2 with corresponding channel gains listed in the channel matrix H with added noise components. This is called Rayleigh fading because the elements of matrix H depicted as Hij are complex Gaussian, meaning real and imaginary parts are Gaussian variables with zero mean and constant variance which we have chosen as half in our simulation. Please note the channel matrix H will be fixed for a project and it does not change with time. We have chosen Rayleigh fading since it is a reasonable model when there are many objects in the environment that scatter the radio signal before it arrives at the receiver. The central limit theorem holds that if there is sufficiently much scatter, the channel impulse response will be well modeled as a Gaussian process irrespective of the distribution of individual components. At the receiver's end, we will assume that H is perfectly known and we have optimal detectors that minimize error probability. These are known as maximum likelihood decoders backed up with efficient algorithms for providing the result. So the problem statement in our case would be to obtain an integer least square solution predicting X which belongs to our constellation as shown previously. The power is taken over a single channel use and therefore the average power will be the sum of average powers of signals of all transmit antennas. This can be shown as per the demonstration. So in our case, we had average power equal to 10, but we have 2 antennas and each is a signal of transmit power 10. So our net power per channel use or our net power will be 20 in case of our 16 QAM model and 2x2 channel. Next up, I'll provide a short description of SNR. So SNR, commonly known as a signal to noise ratio, is basically a ratio of the power of signal to the power of noise. It is also given, it is very commonly known to be observed in the dB scale. Right? One important point to note is that SNR is not same as EB by N naught ratio, which many of the people confuse it to be same. It is actually given by this relation, which is SNR equals EB by N naught times the data rate divided by the channel bandwidth. So as description implies, EB is the signal energy associated with each user data bit. N naught is the noise spectral density, the noise power in a unit hertz bandwidth. So EB by N naught, it is especially useful when comparing the bit error rate performance of different modulation schemes without taking bandwidth into account. If we talk about SNR, then we have to consider bandwidth. When we start with a communication problem, we have SNR as a specification. Since many signals have a wide dynamic range, signals are often expressed using the logarithmic decibel scale. We will now be moving forward to the discussion of ML detection algorithms. Thank you.
Once the signal is transmitted, it will undergo linear channel effects and noise will be added. So the received signal will be distorted. So will be the received vector. So the red point here describes the received vector and all the black points represent our signal set. So now the question is, what is the transmitted vector given this red point as the received vector? So we'll use lattice theory to develop a mathematical form of this concept. Lattices are infinite discrete set of vectors. The main difference being lattices are infinite, whereas constellations are bounded. However, since lattice theory is well developed, we can use it for analyzing sets assuming they are infinite. So any vector in the lattice is represented as B dot S, where B is the generator matrix having its columns as the basis vector of the lattice, and S is an integer vector. So to find the distance between any received vector y and any of the lattice point, it is given as a norm of y minus b dot s. To find the s vector, which has the minimum distance from the received vector, we will minimize it against all possible values of s. Since the setup is similar in the communication paradigm also, the problem reduces similarly, taking an analogy from the lattices, as we'll minimize y minus hx, where h is the channel matrix is discussed before, and x is the transmitted vector which has integer entries, and here y is the received vector. So how do we approach to the problem? One of the obvious one is the naive approach. We'll scan through all the points in the constellation and we'll find the point which has the minimum distance. It can be represented in this fashion as we'll take distance of the red point from all the black points, and whichever distance comes to be the minimum, we'll take that black point as a transmitted point. But as you can see, it will be computational intensive, and also it will take too much time. Also, if we increase the constellation, the time complexity increases exponentially. So another better way for doing this is, assume a circle around the received vector, and suppose if we somehow find all the points inside this circle, then we just have to find the distance of the received vector from these 4 points. It will reduce the time complexity by a large amount. The spear decoding algorithm uses the same approach. But the main question here is, how do we find all the points inside this circle? So what spear decoding algorithm does is, it's obviously difficult to find all the points inside a m-dimensional sphere. So it will take one dimension at a time and find its interval, and one dimension at a time, and one dimensional circle is equivalent to an interval. So it takes one dimension and find all the points that can that index can take. It will then find the interval for all the dimension given all the previous dimensions. So we'll briefly describe what this algorithm does using the tree structure we have developed. Let's say in the first dimension we get an interval. We take the first element of that interval. Suppose we get only one value. We'll take this, we'll save it. Now given this element, we'll find for the next dimension the number of integer points that it can have. So here we get around 3 points. So we again take the first element. Now we have these two elements in our vector. So given these two elements, we'll move to the next level and we find its interval of integers that it can take. Now again we get 3 integer points that it can take. We'll take the first value and then again we'll move down. Now as you can see, it doesn't, for this node, it doesn't have any range of integers lying below it. So what we do is we'll move up one level and take the next integer right to it. So we are now here. So again we can see for the next level we don't have any integer points. So what we'll do is we'll again move to the right side, or we take the next set of integers in this interval. Doing this, we then reach from this point to this point to this point. Now we have found all the elements in a received vector. So we will save it. We'll repeat this process until all these black points, all these black dots are spanned. Now after finding this, we'll move up level 1 and we'll move to the right side this. Again, as we don't have any of the integers in the next level, we'll move up. Then again we don't have anything to the right side, we'll again move up. Then we'll move to the right side. Similarly, in this fashion, once we span all these intervals at each level, what we'll get is a set. What we'll get is a set of points inside the sphere we have chosen of a certain radius. So in this case, we have found only one such vector. But suppose if we found more than one vector, then what we'll do is we'll use the same first approach. We'll among those points we'll find that point which is closest to the received vector, or we can say which is at the minimum distance. We'll use the same approach in the first. We'll calculate each of its distance from the received vector, and we'll take one with the least distance. This is briefly how the sphere decoder works. There are also certain aspects such as what should be the radius of the hypersphere or sphere or a circle in 2 dimension we are taking. The choice of radius also matters. That if we take a small radius, then no vectors will be found inside the sphere. Or suppose if we take a much larger radius, then it will give a large number of points. That will unnecessarily increase the time it takes to run the algorithm. So optimally what we choose is something called the covering radius of the lattice. The covering radius is defined as the radius of the smallest size sphere that when placed on the lattice points can span the entire space. So choosing this as the initial radius, will initialize our algorithm. The simulation results that we found out from this are discussed next. So first we analyze the time taken by both the algorithms. This profile shows the same. The red block is for the naive approach, whereas the blue block is for the sphere decoder. Now we'll calculate the total time. The ML decoder takes around 1.7 seconds in total to run, whereas the spear decoder takes around 0.845 seconds to run, which is even less than half of what the first approach is taking. But we also But we also need to add the time taken by the initialization processes in Sphere decoder, which is around 0.31 seconds, which adds up to a total time of 1.166 seconds. But this total time is also lesser than the first approach. This shows that how the Sphere decoder works better in terms of running time of the algorithms. And then we plot the error rates versus the SNRs for the spear decoder. The plot which we get is like this. The pink line is for the symbol error rate, whereas the blue line is for the bit error rates.